Professor Kochhar using the video or he's...
Welcome everybody. Welcome to today's IIA-50 commemorative lecture by Professor Rajesh Kochhar. Professor Kochhar obtained his MSc in physics in 1967 and PhD in 1973, both from Punjab University, Chandigarh. He served at IIA from 1974 till 1999, when he left to take over as the director of CSIR, National Institute of Science, Technology and Development Studies, New Delhi. He has been an honorary professor of History of Science and Technology at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, NIAS, Bangalore. He is associated with many professional organizations. He was the president of the International Astronomical Union, Commission 41, History of Astronomy during 2012 to 2015. Professor Kochhar is the recipient of Indian National Science Academy's Indira Gandhi Prize for Popularization of Science in 2014. He is also a recipient of National Academy of Sciences Professor R.C. Gupta Endowment History of Science Lecture Award for the year 2006. He has published extensively on history of India, history of astronomy, and history of science, technology, and education. He is the author of The Vedic People, Orient Black Swan 2000, English Education in India 1715 to 1835, Rootless 2020, and jointly with Jayant Narlikar of Astronomy in India, INSA 1995. An astrophysicist turned historian of science, he has lectured extensively in India and abroad. With great pleasure, on behalf of the organizing committee IIA-50, I welcome Professor Kochhar to deliver his talk on Reminiscences, Anecdotes, and Oral History, 50 Years of Indian Institute of Astrophysics. Professor Kochhar.
Thank you, Aruna. It's a matter of great pleasure and honor for me to be speaking here, and it's also a matter of nostalgia for me. And I think if you were looking for a single proof of IIA having served well to people, that is the appointment of Annapurni as the director. Because IIA has been, institutes are good, they do good work, but when it comes to appointment of director, director is brought from outside very often. So the very fact that our director at the moment present is at present is a homegrown scholar who has done extremely well. So that tells you that the 50 years we are talking about uh, have been well spent. Uh, 50 years is a short period in the history of an institution, and yet it is long enough to set standards and define goals. Bapu once said that since there is India in the name of our institute, I want all parts of India to be represented in the faculty. Early years of IIA were characterized by idealism, nationalism, professional rigor, and financial discipline. All people who got associated with the institute in the early days were fully aware of the historical role they were asked to play or they were witness to. 50 years is a long period in the history, in the life of one individual. There are still people alive who are knowledgeable about IIA's early story. I think IIA should invite them to initiate a project of oral history to record their reminiscences because official accounts based on annual reports, etc., are important, but they lack flesh and blood. For flesh and blood, to give uh, oral history is a complementary thing to the recorded history, and therefore, this attempt of mine uh, is an attempt at oral history of early years. By early years, I mean Bhattacharya Bapu here, because Bhattacharya saw himself as completing the task which Bapu left unfinished because of his sudden death. And just as in US on president's death, the vice president takes over. So Bhattacharya was a continuation of Bapu to bring it here. And then he was always guided by what Bapu would have done if he was alive. Before I go further, there are two or three points I and that especially for consideration by Dr. Uh, UNESCO and IAU have started an initiative, Astronomical Heritage Initiative. Kodaikanal Observatory is eligible for it. It's the only observatory in India which is eligible. Most of the applicants.
Maybe you can stop the video, and because of the bandwidth, there is voice breaking. It says here.
So is that okay now?
The audio is quite low actually.
Yeah.
Come closer to the mic and talk maybe.
The mic is quite.
No, because it says here as a message, because of the low bandwidth, it is unable to show the video. So I thought this is a voice is also a problem because of that. Okay.
So I think we can switch off.
Yes.
We'll get rid of the video.
Better? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Now these remarks are
Yes. This is better.
This is better.
especially for Dr. Annapurni. IIA, no, not IIA, but Kodaikanal Observatory is eligible to be included in the list of UNESCO IAU Astronomical Heritage. This is the only observatory, only facility in India which is eligible. And then most of the entries are coming from Western Europe, while UNESCO wants a more broad-based. So I think it would be a very good idea if IIA can fill in the forms and apply. Second point is that when we celebrated 200 years of IIA, Madras Observatory, we identified a lot of old instruments, assembled some instruments which were lying in parts. For a long time, for some time, they were displayed in the institute, but then they became the star attraction for everybody, and they were dumped in the workshop. Some of them, I think, have gone back to Kodaikanal. But I would like the institute to locate them and and install them properly in an exhibition hall with their proper legend. There were also a pictorial exhibition of 200 years of IIA, and that was also dumped. I wonder whether it can be rescued. And the last point is important. A.K. Das, who was the director of Kodaikanal before Bapu took over, didn't have any children. He left all his property, all his money, and imported car to the institute. I think the car must have been sold off as scrap. It was never used. But that money was put in State Bank of India. And 60 years is a long time. It would have multiplied, partly for the sake of the money, partly to honor a director of the institute in Kodaikanal. I think some efforts need to be made with the State Bank at the highest level to get that money for II. In 60 years, the money would have multiplied. So this is an attempt at oral history, and I would like to begin with some three anecdotes, not as anecdotes only, but to set the ball rolling and to describe my credentials as a collector of historical anecdotes. I joined the institute in August 1774. We were at that time stationed in RRI. Dr. Bapu came about a month later, and he wanted to talk to me I was doing. And so in our room there were four people. We went out. We went to the library. There were people reading in the library. So we stood in the corridor, and I said, or I should say, I blurted out, the director of the institute has no place in the institute. And he looked at me very gravely and said, "This is not my institute. If you want to see my institute, you come to Kodaikanal." I just blurted it out, but he didn't seem to mind. So that sort of became like that, acted as an encouragement to me. Then when we shifted to Koramangala, Hutments, on a Saturday, which was a holiday, I went to his office. He was busy. I sat down. There was a paper lying in front of me. I I picked it up, and he said, I take credit for predicting that this star should have magnetic field. Again, instinctively, I turned to the last pages, and he said, not only do I take credit, I am given credit also. So I said, that is what I was going to check. He said, I saw you doing that, and that's why I am telling you. Again, this conversation passed off in a minute, but was sort of, he didn't mind. Finally, in 1982, when he had got Padma Bhushan, when he had been elected president of IIA-50, he came to my office and said, do you want to come to Kodaikanal? I felt very happy. But it turned out that he did not want my company for himself. He wanted my company to neutralize that of our administrative officer at the time. So on the way, I asked him, why? Oh, yeah. He told an incident that after Harvard, before Nainital, Baba asked him to give a talk at AFR. And when he was giving the talk, Baba asked Menon to take notes. Then I asked him all of a sudden, I said, why did you not join TIFR? This is historically important for IIA. I said, why didn't you join TIFR? He was slightly taken aback by the question. He did say something out of politeness. Mrs. Bapu was also with him. She also muttered something. But I think I got the answer. Bapu's father, now let's make a distinction for the time being between M.K. Bapu, the father, and Venu, the son. Bapu was one among the three brothers. Their father passed away, and Bapu had to leave his studies to take up a job. He joined Osmania University and did very well. There is a paper by him, I think, published. So you can very well imagine that for a South Indian, for an astronomer whose son is extremely bright, Kodaikanal was a trophy. It was the pinnacle of success as an astronomer. The director enjoyed very high position in the local society and was the landlord of a 100-acre estate. So it's not surprising that Kodaikanal was the goal set up in the father's mind and transmitted to the son's mind also. There is a precedent for that. In about 1945, 1946, efforts were made to bring S. Chandrasekhar to Kodaikanal. All the conditions which he imposed were accepted. But he didn't come. That's a separate story. But while these negotiations with him were going on, his father visited Kodaikanal Observatory and met the director. So Chandrasekhar's father's wish was also that his son should come and take over the directorship of Kodaikanal. No, Bapu was a very bright student. In 1946, when he would have been in BSc, and he wrote 2 papers which he published in Current Science. And in 47, he met Harlow Shapley. Shapley had come to India for Science Congress, visited Hyderabad. Bapu found out that the hotel where he was staying, Bapu found out that he used to go for a walk every morning. So Bapu parked himself outside the gate of the hotel and talked to him. So this conversation led to his being offered a doctoral position at Harvard. Now, 30 years later, this Bapu got a chance to play the role of Shapley in Koramangala. He was staying in the guest house. He used to go for a walk every day. And Muniappa from Madiwala, a young man who lived in Madiwala, stood outside the gate. And when Bapu came out, he talked to him. And Bapu was reminded of his days, so that he gave a job to Muniappa. In fact, Bapu suggested to so many people or hinted to so many people, he wanted people to talk to him while he went for his morning walk. Now, I mentioned 1947 Science Congress. Another person who came for that Science Congress as a foreign delegate was from Sweden, Rydberg. He came to Bangalore as Raman's guest. He was introduced to Radhakrishnan. And this connection, after a few years, Radhakrishnan made use of that connection and went to Sweden. And so that was his induction into radio astronomy. So 1947 Science Congress influenced the career of 2 persons, Bapu and Radhakrishnan. Now, Bapu came back with his PhD, but there was a problem. He had gone on a scholarship given by Hyderabad State, and one of the conditions was that he would serve the university on return. University had no position in the astronomy department. They wanted him to join physics department. He did not want to join physics department. And that is where his connection with C.V. Raman came to his use. 30 years ago, I wrote to Ramaseshan. I have that his letter still with me. Raman wanted Bapu's help. Raman knew Bapu. Raman wanted Bapu's help in making a telescope out of that 4-inch blank. But at that time, when Bapu returned, Bhagwantam was the vice chancellor. Bhagwantam was Raman's student. And when when Raman came to Hyderabad, Bapu met him. Raman asked Bhagwantam to sit with the driver, and while Bapu sat with Raman, and Bapu explained to Raman on the way in the car from the observatory to the airport. And Raman then told Bhagwantam, let him go. So Bapu was released from the contract and free. Then from 1954 to 1960, he was the director of UPSO, Nainital Observatory. And he was some sort of an anthropological curiosity. I think Bapu is the first first South Indian who was a long-term resident of Nainital. I don't think, and he knew Hindi, but his Hindi was Hyderabadi, and so there was some sort of a curiosity. But at a scientific level, his Harvard connection was put to use there. I have a paper in Current Science on international geophysical year. Those of you who are interested in the details, can take a look. But it was a Harvard connection which resulted in a satellite tracking camera being established as part of IGI in at Nainital, and it was a big achievement because those were the days of Cold War. India was seen as being close to Soviet Union, and India participating in space program was an important thing. In fact, Indian space program comes out of IGY, and Harvard wanted to run the satellite camera on a turnkey basis for themselves, but very far-sightedly, Bapu said, "No, you train our people." So that was the beginning. When he came, there was a post of Kodaikanal director was advertised. I think that advertisement should be located, and also Bapu's appointment letter should be located because there is important document. Bapu was very young at that time. And if he had remained with IMD, he would have risen to be the Director General and remained Director General for a very long time. So I think his appointment was exclusively for the observatory, and there was a clause that he cannot join the IMD. Of course, he had no intention, but I think it will be very interesting to see that. So I have mentioned thus part of IGY. 3 instruments were sanctioned for Kodaikanal. Only one of them was installed, that is the tunnel telescope. Das set it up. It wasn't working very well. So when Bapu came, the first task for him to make this tunnel telescope operational. So the Kodaikanal observatory facilities that you have in solar physics, nothing has been added after 1960 or 1958. But there is a very interesting story about the tunnel. It became Bapu's refuge. B.V. Raman, who is was a very well-known astrologer, very popular, very powerful. He came to Kodaikanal, he visited the observatory. He wanted to meet the director. The director did not want to meet him. So what did Bapu do? He went underground. He hid in the tunnel. While B.V. Raman was hovering around on the surface, and every time Raman asked, "Where is Bapu?" they said, "No, he's very busy with his experimentation observations, so he can't come out." So Bapu remained hidden in the tunnel till Raman, out of boredom or impatience, left the campus. So that was the beginning of Bapu's presence in Kodaikanal. He set up the telescope, but then he shifted his attention to nighttime astronomy. And in fact, he is the modernizer of nighttime astronomy in India by this establishment of Kavalur Observatory. Kavalur Observatory is a very fascinating chapter because a new observatory was being created. We have often talked of 1 meter telescope and the 2 meter telescope, but its mainstay was still the smaller telescopes, which were put to very good use. And I think Kavalur Observatory's history from Institute records is very worthy of being described in detail. So after establishing Kavalur, Bapu set his sight on getting autonomy for Kodaikanal. It's just like the independence struggle of Bangladesh. And obviously there was a very big objection from opposition from IMD. And again, we don't have much details because Bapu wasn't very well connected. And, so we don't know what letters he wrote. How did he persuade DGM to, or who intervened on his behalf and so on? We don't know anything. We do know that there was opposition, and at that time DGM was Koteshwar Rao, And then when I think it was more or less agreed, DMK government has been established in Madras, and a DMK MP said in the parliament that since a non-Congress government has been formed in Tamil Nadu, and central government is shifting its offices out. No, that was wrong, because the correct answer was that we have created another facility in Tamil Nadu itself, and Bangalore as the administrative office for convenience. Dr. Karan Singh was the minister. He was the minister for civil aviation and tourism. Instead of getting into any details, he said, no, this is not. So this delayed formation of IIA, and that had a very negative effect, because Babu had got from BDA an allotment of 20 or 25 acres in Koramangala. But no payment could be made. And that piece of land was taken back. And it's now, I think it's where Bank of Baroda stands now. And it was taken then very happily. St. John's paid for it and took it. So with great difficulty later, a much smaller piece of land, which is now the campus, could be taken over, could be acquired. So that's when that's how IIA was left with the smaller piece. But Koteshwar Rao historically should be given credit for suggesting the name. And this Dr. Bapu told me. He had opposed tooth and nail the separation of Kodaikanal. But when it was decided that Kodaikanal would be separated, he said, you are going out of IMD. So he suggested that your name should have India in it. So he suggested the name Indian Institute of Astrophysics, which is a good name, because as I said, it gives it makes it a national representative. The name is such. So now, although IIA was officially sanctioned, its problems were not over. There were two types of problems still left. One was that when autonomy was given, was to be given, all the staff was given an option. The option was to either remain with IMD or shift to the new institute. Now that was a very serious point, because suppose most of the staff had gone to IMD, then IIA would have flopped. So Bapu didn't talk to anybody and tell him that stay with us. No, I think most of the spade work or PR work was done by Bhattacharya, if it was done at all. But senior people like Bhattacharya, C.H.V. Shastri, Shivraman, who decided to stay with the institute, demanded their pound of flesh. Left to Bapu, he would have shifted the institute only when Koramangala campus was ready. He wouldn't have come before that. He didn't come before that, but under pressure from his senior colleagues, he had to, against his own judgment, accept to the demand or request. It was more like a blackmail. And then Radhakrishnan, who has recently joined as RRI, came to the help. Now, Bappu and Radhakrishnan were poles apart in their personal characteristics, in their nature, but their relationship was marked by mutual respect. So Rad offered to put up the stuff, and that is how. And now, see the story which I told you, which I didn't know this history. When I said the director of the institute has no place, so you can relate to it. But there was people did come, but there was a negative thing also, Bapu did not make any effort to get residential area for this reason. He didn't. I think the history of IIA would have been different either when that 25-acre compound had been available, or if he had not been forced to shift beforehand. So the first problem was retaining people who would side with him. It's like the party splits and people come with him rather than go back. So that was a success. The second problem that came, the second problem that came was the first governing council. Bapu's first choice for chairmanship of the governing council was Satish Dhawan. Probably thought that since he's in Bangalore itself, it will be easy for coordination. But Satish Dhawan at that time was going to USA for a year, and that was a crucial period. So Menon became the choice. Menon was a very wise and liberal sort of a person because of Malayali connection or otherwise. All things put together, he had a very good working relationship with Bapu. He remained with IIA throughout till he became a minister, and then he could not have continued at this position. So Menon was made the chairman, but the first council was not very friendly to IIA. I mentioned the choice of land in Koramangala. And Bapu was very keen to get land away from North Bangalore. He was offered, I think by Ramaseshan, that we'll arrange for you to get land in Rajmahal Vilas near RRI. But he was conscious of the fact that after his death, IIA would be made a colony of RRI or Institute of Science. So he wanted it to be physically away so that administratively it became independent. So that was a wise, far-sighted step. So Dr. Abhyankar was a member, and as you know, Abhyankar was a very capable astronomer, but he was also very sensitive. And I think there's a background. He was a candidate for the directorship. The other candidate was Karandikar. And Abhyankar was no doubt far more qualified to be the director than Karandikar was. But Karandikar was chosen and he was not chosen. And the committee which chose Karandikar included Bapu as an expert. So Abhyankar was a member of the council. And once in front of Karan Singh, I think Karan Singh was still the minister, he said, okay, so your budget is 40 lakhs and you have 40 papers in your annual report. So each of your papers costs 1 lakh rupees. Now, this was a rather an indelicate thing to say in front of the minister. But so I have spoken of the difficulties of IIA when it was set up. First of all, getting people to support it from among the staff. The second point was a governing council which will side with the director. So that happened after this term was over. So the new council had 3 members: Rad, Trihan from Chandigarh, and Narsimham from Bark. So they were very, what should I say, friendly to Bapu, and they respected Bapu's decision. So Bapu had very smooth sailing after that. But then all of a sudden Bapu died, and Narsimham became active in a partisan manner after Bapu's death. Now, when Bapu died, the post who should be appointed, Menon also had half a mind, or 3/4 of a mind, to bring somebody from TIFR. So that's why Bapu Bhattacharya remained acting director for a long time, for 2 years, which weakened his position. And once Menon came to Bangalore, drove straight to Mrs. Bapu's house, and Mrs. Bapu showed him a letter or something which said that Bapu wanted Bhattacharya to succeed him. So that in a way was clinching argument. So the appointment was given to Bhattacharya. So that's how Bhattacharya became the director. And I think it was a very good decision because he was loyal to Bapu, and he was loyal to Bapu. He knew what had been going on, and he was keen to complete the task which Bapu had left unfinished, uncritically. Because if anyone else had come from outside, he wouldn't have sympathized because IIA was too new at that time. So when Bhattacharya retired, then again the problem came. Then obviously there was a move to bring director from outside. But Dr. Shivraman, he told Menon that I've been there for so long, so you don't bring anybody from outside to supersede me. So Shivraman remained the acting director. He retired as acting director, and the process was taken up only then. So then there were two candidates. One was from RRI Srinivasan, and the other was Ramanath Kaushik, who was the TIFR's official candidate. IIA faculty tried to play a role under the leadership of Narasimhan. And then Menon made a very sarcastic, very not sarcastic, but caustic remark. It was that he was told that director should be from within the institute. And I remember Menon's words. He said there is no tribalism involved. We'll choose the best person for the institute. If he's from inside, good. If he's not from the institute, doesn't matter, because the best person has to be chosen. So this objection to tribalism was a point well made, and that's why I said at the very beginning when I was talking about Annapurna's choice. So that incident came to my mind after 40 years, after 35 years, that the director of the institute should be on merit. And if the director is trained from within the institute, that only shows that institute is imparting good training. IIA has already provided directors to two institutes. Dipankar is a recent example. Before that, Venkat Krishnan, who went to Udaipur. So I think that training and scientific rigor, these are very important factors. And there's another thing I mentioned about nationalism and professional rigor. See, no complaint has been made ever in the institute on the selection of staff. Never. And I want to now tell you a little bit of some incidents which some of you may know, but they're not part of the proper history. See, Menon and Bapu both were very conscious of doing the right thing, not doing the wrong thing, and not trying to be brazen about what they did. A person was appointed in the institute, I think at the 425 grade or 550 grade. There were objections from the union, employees union, that this appointment violates the rules. Maybe that objection was right. So 5 years later, like all of us got personal promotion. After 5 years, you are assessed and promoted. In this particular case, personal promotion was not given, but the post was advertised in the higher grade, so that this person was eligible, others were also eligible, and then the selection was made. So even if there was an irregularity, to begin with, it didn't last more than 4 years. Within 5 years, and if the union pointed it out, a note was taken of it. So that was a very important, like the administration being responsive to what is being said about its action was a very important thing. Now, Bapu was very proud of setting up Kavalur in a forest area. And as many of you know, there was a drought in Andhra, and elephants traveled 200 kilometers and broke the fence and came into the observatory. I mean, they had no interest in astronomy, but they wanted water. And I think once Bapu spotted or got a very poisonous snake, so he took it. I think it must have been dead. He wouldn't take the alive snake, but he took it to Bombay and gave it to their, I think, Hopkins Institute or Pasteur Institute, one of them. So he was like well. He had a very well-rounded personality. He was interested in various things. Now I want to tell you a story about IIA, which is about Kavalur, which is a sort of a comical story, sort of. So there were the institute vehicle, I think Shanmugam was the driver. It met with an accident, and I think it was our driver's fault. There were two young scientists who were in the car at that time. Now, what exactly happened was not to be recorded before the police. Police was to be given a modified, sanitized, innocent type of version. Now, Bapu felt that Mr. A will not be able to tell a lie, will not be able to defend a lie, while Mr. B is smarter. He would be able to present and defend the version that has been officially prepared. So when the report was made, Mr. A's name was deleted from the passengers list. So it was said that Mr. B was going in the vehicle when this thing happened. So A's name was not mentioned at all. So this, I mean, this is more like a joke. It has no. But establishment of Kavalur Observatory, it was, but nothing happened in Kodaikanal, and now I think it can be made into a history of astronomy science center. But Kavalur is still a flourishing observatory, and so there. Now there's a one more point which I wish to make, that the last point regarding Bapu which I wish to make, which is very strongly etched in my memory, and that sums up Venu Bapu's not role, that sums up his staff's perception of Bapu. It happens very rarely. As you know, Bapu was to go to Greece to preside over IAU as president, preside over the General Assembly as the president of IAU. Before that, he went to Munich as a visiting professor. Everything. His heart condition became bad, and he died. And then his body was brought back. Before he went, he talked to the workshop people. he spoke to the workshop people and said, I say this, we had a very ugly looking Matador van which had some bottle green color, truly ugly. He says, see, then this color doesn't look good. So before I return, you paint it. Babu was to come much later after IIU, but his visit was cut short. He was not coming back, but his body was coming back. Then Johnson, who worked in the workshop, the whole night he kept on crying and painting the van, saying that Bapu had said, before I return, you should paint the van. He's coming back tomorrow morning. I should get the van ready as he had wanted. So you can see the sense of loyalty and emotion. Of course, the other things are well known, like people walked from Koramangala to Wilson Garden after his van and so on. So I think that sums up the person with his genuineness. And the last point I wish to make, because after all we are talking of 50 years of IIA, many of you may or may not know the DST was established to fund Raman Research Institute. Before that, it didn't exist. But if you look at the bylaws of all DST's autonomous institutes, they're legally flawed because DS, IIA, and all other institutions. See, there are two types of institutions. One are like IIA, which are fully owned by the government. Then you have institutions like RRI, TFR, PRL, which legally are private bodies and grant-in aid bodies. But if you look at institutions like IIA, which are government bodies, the government has placed its property and all the amount, the institute, in the hands of a governing council, which is a private body. I think the DBT has set up some institutions where the DBT secretary is the chairman of the council. But in IIA and other institutions, chairman is a private person, is a private individual, not a government officer. It creates problems. It can create problems if the chairman of the governing council decides to be a Dhritarashtra, for example. So for the smooth functioning of an autonomous institute, the ethical standards of the director and the governing council have to be very high. There has to be a rapport between the two, and a general sensitivity which should not be interpreted legalistically. And by and large, more than other institutions elsewhere, IIA has been very lucky, by and large, I say, not that the good sense, the dominance of good sense and professional integrity has been a very important factor. And I want to tell now two anecdotes before I close and we can have questions. We had a administrative, no, not administrative officer, but a stores and purchase officer. I think his name was Marcos. And at that time, the institute was new. So a lot of money was being spent. And there were allegations of kickback against him. He was removed. I think he was not confirmed. He was on probation, so it's easy to remove a person on probation, and he was removed. Now, the other story is funny. Some of our old colleagues will remember it. We didn't have any hostel, and the first woman researcher or staff was Sunitra, and she had to be put up in Central College because There was no place where she could have sit in the institute. And we had a cook in the guest house. He was a very good cook. And he wrote poetry also. And he had built a very good rapport with the administrative officer, Kalyan Sundaram. And in his own limited uh, sphere of perception, he thought, since I have a very good equation with the administrative officer, so he was very rough and rude to the research scholars. I think Monroe and Rangarajan, Nagendra were there. So he wouldn't prepare fresh food for them and give them cold food and so on. So they complained to the director. And the director acted on it, and that man was removed from service. So I wish Bapu had lived longer, but this sort of small incidents, and he had Bapu had a good sense of humor. I want to close with a story, again anecdote. Once I told him, I said, when Satish Dhawan retires from the Space Commission, you will be asked, or you might be asked to become the chairman. He liked the idea, but he says, "Oh, I don't want to shift to Delhi." I said, "You will have no choice. I mean, Menon would come that Madam wants you to go to Nagaland as the governor. You will go." He thought for a minute and laughed. He said, "Yes." So let me close on this, that he has, Bapu struggled without much connection. He didn't have any hi-fi connections. He was very persuasive. He was extremely charming. So the things which he achieved would have been easier for a Sarabhai or for a Bhabha. But the fact that he achieved them, I think it needs to be investigated a little more. I wish IIA well. I'm very happy that I was associated with it. And finally, I want to go back to the 2 points which I made earlier. One, I would be very happy if IIA takes initiative in getting Kodai Canal a UNESCO tag for astronomical heritage. And I think IIA has a history of more than 200 years. Kodai Canal has a history of more than 100 years. I think honoring the memory of A.K. Das by tracking his trust, taking control of that money and naming something after him from that money, I think it would be a very good gesture. Thank you very much. बेटा बोलना नहीं तूने.
Thank you, Sir Kochhar, for such a wonderful, nice narrative of your talk, your association with IAA. Many of these incidents we didn't even know, and extremely we enjoyed your talk. Maybe the audience would like to interact with you. So if there are any questions, you can ask now.
Yes. I wish I could see the people, but that's fine.
I would like to ask a question.
Please imagine me as a blind man so I can recognize. You have to tell me the name.
This is Chansmurthy here. Would it have been it would have been possible for IIA to have stayed in Kodaikanal, would it not? They could have very well run the observatory from there, done whatever we do in Bangalore. Why was it not so? And would it have made much of a difference to the institute?
Yes, I can answer that question with a level of confidence. First of all, if you go back to the late 60s, managing, given the general condition of infrastructure and so on, managing Kavalur from Kodaikanal would have been very difficult. point one. The other difficulty is even bigger. Uh, People like me, many others, who happily came to Bangalore, they may not have come to Kodaikanal because it was a place far away. So both these reasons, attracting people, new people, and managing the travelers, both these factors. I mean, they played a role at that time. I know. Does that answer your question? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, may I ask a question?
Please.
Yeah, Rajesh sir, this is Sujan here.
Sujan.
Yeah, so what we know that before 1990, there was irregular take-up of students. Now, from 1990, that is from our batch, on regular basis, students have been taken.
Yeah.
Now, why Bappu ignored or neglected the students thing on a regular basis, or why the number of students didn't increase in IIA before 1990?
First of all, there was no money. Point one. Because, in fact, I mentioned A.K. Das's campus, what is called, trust, and there was no money in Kodaikanal for the for scholarship for giving scholarship. And secondly, there weren't too many people in the institute also to teach students because the Brahman and Bhattacharya, they themselves got this PhD by at a really senior stage. So I should tell you a story. When P.P. Prabhu wrote his thesis,
Come closer to the mic. It is still
right.
yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
when Prabhu wrote his thesis, the examiner was somebody good from Kerala. The university almost chooses at random. So Bapu once told me that maybe we can make it a public defense. I said it will only expose examiner. Prabhu would have withstood any viva from anybody in the world, but it is only expose examiner which you have got for him. So those early days, you see, this is Sudan, you have made a very good point, and this needs further investigation. When did IIA become professionally self-sufficient? I mean, to put it very, very bluntly, there were hardly any people in the early days. And there was IMD culture, which they had imbibed very much. And in fact, your question needs to be modified. There are people who did their doctorate with Bappu, who did their doctorate with, who submitted their thesis, who worked under his guidance, who were mentored by him, trained by him. So IIA could not have taken students very early because there was no money, there were not good enough people to inspire students, and students also did not know. I mean, you are from the first batch, you know that task was entrusted to me, preparing an advertisement, sending it all over, and so on. It took time. You had to be people to do that. And then, instead of science, all these institutes were involved in this JAP program, which helped. So IIA took its time coming into the league of glamorous institutes like Institute of Science and the RRI for a very long time. It was like the poor country cousin of these glamorous institutes.
Okay, so what transpired? Yeah, what transpired to take the students regularly in 1990?
You see, I mean, I'm recalling. I think by that time there were people in the faculty who wanted students. So let me put it this way: IIA became autonomous. It was autonomous only in name, in the sense that its culture was still IMD culture. The people were still IMD people, there was still hierarchical consideration that IMD culture did not vanish once the institute became autonomous. It took time for better quality people to join IIA, who had been trained abroad, who had a wider perspective, and who wanted to PhD students. So it took, I mean, you have made a very good point that 20 years and 20 years later, and Pereira got students, uh, he used the Pereira method, and it is arm twisting method on Bhattacharya to get his students. But you're very right, there was no methodological way, there was no method, there was no process of hiring students. So it took time. It could have been done 5 years earlier, but it couldn't have been done very early. But
Thank
there
you,
are
sir.
people who joined the faculty and did their PhD. Pati is there, Prabhu is there, Jagdesu is there, Ramesh Kapoor is there. So they are in a way PhD students also. And there is another problem. I think that's a very major problem. We did not have any arrangement. We couldn't have given degrees ourselves. So, and it took time to work. See, all these people, uh, they have obtained their degree from far off universities where they were using, making use of the fact that they had their MSc from Agra or Punjabi University of this, and so they submitted their thesis there. And in fact, we benefited because of jealousies within Bangalore University. Bangalore University rule said that one of the examiners should be from within the university. And we needed examiners, so some people were co-opted. And they were getting, their CV was getting strengthened. So their colleagues objected that we should register, we should permit, for example, IIA faculty to register students on their own name. So the streamlining of the method of getting degrees for our students in their own name took time. And I want to tell you one story of what the short-sightedness of IIA faculty. In 87, we started bicentennial lecture series. First lecture, as expected, was given by Andy Menon. But Yashpal was one of the earliest speakers. And he was at that time chairman of CC. He offered to मैं तुम्हें यूनिवर्सिटी बना देता हूँ. And our people said नहीं. Although common sense demanded कि कुछ दे ही रहा है ना, ले तो नहीं रहा. He's giving us something, he's not taking anything away. So, but it took, I think the most precise answer to your question would be that all earlier PhDs were ad hoc, with great difficulty finding an examiner here, finding an affiliating body here. So once we were able to have an arrangement where our students would get PhD in the name of their supervisors, registered properly. I think that's. Are you there?
Yeah, are there any more questions from the participants?
Just to say thank you very much, Kochhar. It was really very nice talk. And it took us a bit into the history of IIA. I just wanted to share some of one issue which you coined for me. When we were all students, I think it is 1991, we used to make Maggies. We used to have a small pantry there, just adjacent to auditorium. Myself and Sujan and Maya was there with us, and we used to make nice thing Maggie, and then you used to stay for long during night time. So you used to pass by our group. One particular day we were discussing quite a bit about. I think that was the Iraq war was going on. I think 91. early or something. The US was invading, and then pros and cons, and then all sorts of things we were talking. So you joined that small discussion, and then you said one word which took me quite a bit. You said, "How come being a Reddy, you are now Stella Reddy? You are supposed to be a planet Reddy." So, okay, what it is all about. Then I understood from you, because many of the Reddys in Bangalore owned lands. So, yeah.
Thank you. But I'm reminded of when you're talking, the very interesting opening was of the IIA Staff Club.
Yeah.
And there was a tremendous enthusiasm because all the staff members, administrative staff members were young. They parted with great enthusiasm. We had no money, so I myself went to a venue road and took some 2 rupee ball pens and got IIA written on it. And Mr. Bapu was asked to give the prizes, and I made a mistake. One team didn't get the participation that
Yeah.
pen. So I went again to Venue Road and got 12 or 24 more pens. And I said, I'm sorry, you are not going to get it from Mrs. Bapu now, but at least you can keep it. And while there was about 100 certificates which Bapu had to sign. And while I took the certificates to him for signing, I asked him about his name. And then he told me the story. He was given the name Venu. So if he had followed his father's tradition, his name would have been M.T. Venu. But when he was taken to the convent school for admission, they asked him his name. They said, no, you need his surname also. So Bapu was added. And while he was telling the story, he was also signing. So he started signing, he used to sign MKV Bapu. But while telling the story, he started signing MK Venu Bapu. So if you look at those certificates of those, the first batch, you will see that there are two signatures which have been given, MK Bapu and then MK Venu Bapu. But if he had lived longer, he would have enjoyed the academic atmosphere that developed in IIA much later. I think Sujan made that point. I'm raising it. Because he was Harvard trained, at heart he was a professor, although he enjoyed being a director. But most of the people who he had with him were from a hierarchical mode of thinking. See, most of the people in the institute did not sit down when they called on the police. First time I went to him, I waited for half a minute for him to say sit down. He didn't. So I said no, he didn't mind. So this getting over, so I think what Sujan said, what he said, I think shifting from IMD culture to a research institute culture took time, and interaction with the students. Many faculty members were very stuck up. I'm a gazetted officer, I am this grade and that grade. So, like what is in Bengali is called adda. So that concept is a very important concept for a research institute. But institutes have difficulty developing that. Well, it comes naturally to university.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Can I just make a comment? Thank you very much, Professor Kochhar. This is Dipankar here.
Yeah.
And as you said, you were our mentor in the first year during our, coursework period. So all of us used to enjoy this adda with you as well. And I mentioned in my talk a few weeks back in this same forum that on Sundays our canteen used to be closed, and we used to barge into your house. And thanks to you and your wife, we had good adda and good food as well as in some of those Sundays. So thank you very much for all your support.
Very
And
kind of you to remember.
no,
And at that
my
and that age, food is more important than food for thought.
Surely, surely. And also, I would like to point out one more thing which I really enjoyed when we were students, and I think some of you, really paid attention to that. Although we were students, but I must say, in an IA, we were never really differentiated between a staff or a permanent staff or a student. We were given really, the same kind of treatment by all, starting from administration to, by anybody, and that actually gave us a lot of sort of satisfaction, and I think that drives all of us to come back to IIA. Even when we went away, it was always a driving force for us to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, agrees. Our faculties, our senior was quite friendly with TP Prabhu singing Ravinder Sangeet. Bhaskar Datta was very friendly. He was very friendly, and that has given us a lot of responsibility also.
See, the very fact the director dismissed a staff member for not treating research scholars properly sends the right sort of a message.
Mhm. Thank you for all that, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Kochhar. It was a very nice talk, and thank you for your suggestions. We'll look into it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can formally close the meeting. Thank you again,
Yes.
Professor.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I would see in when the next lecture is held. And I do hope next year you will have post-corona period, you will have a face-to-face small meeting for IIA.